just wave and say hi. Jenna's with also. All right, so moving forward in our agenda, I want to introduce Lori Crowder. She's the interim executive director at the Alliance of Local Service Organizations at A.L.S.O, and she's going to share with us briefly the sort of how A.L.S.O arrived at even a point like today where we're talking about domestic violence, intimate partner violence within the context of community violence. And so please welcome her with a warm round of applause.
I'm not quite sure how I'm supposed to follow Jose Gomez. I'm not quite sure how I'm supposed to follow Jesse Fuentes, except to say that I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be in this space this morning. I'm grateful for all of you for coming out and being with us here under this tent in the rain. I'm sure you're chilly, but you're committed. Right? I'm grateful for also staff. I'm grateful for these young people who are with us, who are running the sound for us. I am grateful for the people who put up this tent. I'm grateful for the people who put up these walls last night for us and set up these tables and put the tablecloths down. I'm grateful for the people who got up at 4 o'clock this morning to go to work, to cook our breakfast. Right? And make sure that it was hot and got here on time, and that now we all have full bellies, right? And we can listen and pay attention and be fed and hopefully feed our spirits today as well. I'm grateful for the men in this room who are doing this work and who are committed to ending violence against women. And I am grateful for the women who are making space for the men to be here. Because that's a very important role that we play in making space for them at this table. And perhaps most importantly, I'm grateful for the people who are not here. The people who we need to be better for. The people that we serve and the people that we don't serve, right? I'm most sort of keenly aware today of the people that we don't serve yet. The people that we haven't reached yet. The people that we talk about, some people call them at risk, right? We also talk about them living in risk. Young men, young women in our community who are, who've experienced serious trauma, right? Who are living in very dangerous situations every day, who may be gang affiliated or not, may be dating young men who are gang affiliated, may be experiencing incredible violence, living through serious trauma. I'm grateful for them. And the reason I'm grateful for them is because they're helping create a space for us to have this conversation today about how we can be better. Right? And so when I think about A.L.S.O's story and how we kind of came to today, I'm going to speed through a timeline for you. But also incorporated back in 1998 when we were just the Alliance of Logan Square Organizations. We changed our name several years ago to the Alliance of Local Service Organizations because we began to provide services to just more than Logan Square, right? So to Humboldt Park and to communities nationwide. Back in, and at that time we were coordinating services for Logan Square, social services. Back in 2007, I began to have conversations with the executive director at that time, David Castle. Some of you may know him. He left the organization to go into the United Way back in February or March of this year, and I assumed his position at that time as interim executive director. But David and I started having coffee, right? Probably back in 2006. To say, wouldn't it be cool if, right? It would be so great if, you could have a place where people were addressing intimate partner violence and community violence under the same roof. We don't have to separate this out. People who are living those lives, right, that are experiencing violence and trauma on a daily basis don't compartmentalize and don't think about their lives in these very separate ways. Why should we? What if we put all that under the same roof? And then got an opportunity to do that through a couple of grants that we got and said, okay, cool. So I came to work in also 2007. And then we said, well, wait a minute. If now we're addressing all these different kinds of violence and we're doing it under the same roof, maybe we need to take another look at that tired old mission statement, right, that we've got. And so we rewrote our mission statement, and our mission now is to end violence in the streets and homes of communities nationwide. Right? So not just Logan Square, not just Humboldt Park, nationwide, not just streets, but also homes. And so we said, okay, wow. So if we're doing, if our mission now is to end violence in the streets and homes of communities nationwide, what's that mean for us? What's that mean, streets and homes? So we decided to go to the experts. And the experts in our community were the people we were not serving. Felt very, very fortunate to have on staff ceasefire workers who have incredible connections and credibility in the community, who could bring in high risk, in-risk young men and women, 17, 18, 19, 20, 24, right, mid-20s, to teach us. So what does quote-unquote dating violence look like in your life? They're like, they didn't even understand the language about dating. That sounded like something that people do in the 50s or something, right? So I felt very old at that moment. But we had these focus groups, right? And we learned we sat at the feet of these young people and learned from these young people who told us that we weren't getting it right. That they had experienced serious trauma, right? Witnessing sexual violence, experiencing sexual violence. There's a young woman who said, I didn't know, I thought I consented to sex with one man. Ultimately, I've been raped by 7. And I learned about that when I saw it on YouTube. Okay. Because she had been under the influence of alcohol and other drugs at that time. Serious trauma, right? Now, these were young women who, again, were gang affiliated or living their lives in the context of community violence. We're talking with young men who talked about serious trauma that they had experienced growing up, right? In the community and in their homes. And we weren't getting it right for them, and the way I knew we weren't getting it right was because I asked them, where do you go for help? Nowhere. They were talking to each other. These traumatized young people were talking to each other, but they weren't going to any of us in this room. Why? They weren't seeking services, formal services from anybody. So, well, okay. So then we started to pull in the service providers. Say, okay, service providers, what can you do for these young people, right? Domestic violence service providers, right? Young women who are, say, affiliated with gang-involved men who, they may be carrying drugs and weapons. What are you seeing them? What are you doing for them? And starting to engage domestic violence service providers in conversation about how we can be better for these young women. Simultaneously, or subsequently actually, we started to have conversations with ceasefire sites, and some of you in the room have been a part of this journey with us, and I appreciate you so much still being here and being on this journey with us. And said, what about these young men who may be experiencing, maybe perpetrating, maybe victims, right? What's being done for them in terms of intimate partner violence? Nothing really at this point other than the commitment of the people who are doing the work to reach out and serve them the best they could. But it wasn't really part of the ceasefire model. Right? And so we said, okay, why don't we pull these two things together and create a space where domestic violence agencies, other social service agencies, counseling centers, substance abuse agencies, ceasefire sites can all come together in the same space and begin to think about how to improve services for this high-risk group of young people, right? People who are victims of violence, who are perpetrating violence, who are traumatized, who need our help. we do that? And we said we absolutely can. And in doing so, we've brought you here today. That's why we're here. We're here today to think about how we can all come together to engage these very high-risk young people, engage men, right, in ending violence. That's the focus today, engaging these young men in ending violence against women. Right. We have, yesterday we held a workshop in our own office and we'll be hearing a little bit more about that today. But we'll be engaging our own staff, but also the participants. We invited young men from the community into our office, right, to talk with them about these issues. We had a drumming circle. Right. We'll be bringing the drums in later today. So you'll get to see a little bit more about that. So I invite you, those of you who are not familiar with the work we've been doing, I invite you to join with us. Those of you who are familiar, I invite you to continue. And I really want to hear from you and learn from you today. And I'm hoping that you will share your own stories and struggles and successes today as well, so that we can all learn from each other. Because really the power in the room is with you, right? So that we can support each other and create, as Jose Lopez was saying, a community, right? So that we can become a community together in ending violence against women, in supporting these very high-risk young people. And I'm also very grateful that we've got the support of these two gentlemen that you'll be meeting in just a minute. So, what I'd like to do now is thank you again for being here. And I'd like to hand the microphone back to Raul.